How strong is a Xenomorph?
It depends on what continuity you use. Most of the time they're like getting shot up by, like various forms of assault rifles. So like, obviously you have the iconic Marine assault rifle from the Alien franchise. But in the AVP franchise, they get like shot up by M16s. But they're also able to just like rip apart like steel doors and shit. So they probably are war level really like consistently.
When it comes to Rocky's physical stats, he of course scales to Ivan Drago, who infamously can output over 2,000 pounds per square inch behind his physical strikes. Rocky, of course, is able to take these attacks and for 15 rounds and dish out enough pain to bring Ivan Drago to the floor. So by all metrics, he should be in that same range. Now, for some context, or comparison rather, that amount of force is nearly comparable to what it would take to crack concrete apart, and I believe is equal to, or if not multiple times, the bite force of a tiger. And that was even in the midst of Ivan Drago's training. Oh, there is one weird statement about Rocky 6 where Stallone states that he's actually stronger than ever in that movie. Now, this most likely means lifting strength, but if you disregard that, then Rocky 4 would certainly be his prime. There are also various statements about Rocky and the supporting cast that just call their talents superhuman, and I think that transitions nicely into a statement that Sylvester Stallone made about Rocky versus Rambo, his two most popular characters. And it is worth noting as well that Stallone is pretty much the total authority on both of these properties. He's written, directed, produced almost all of the films involving both these characters. He says that a fight between them could pretty much go either way in all capacity. Like, if Rocky was to box Rambo, Rocky would probably win, and then if it goes to the ground, Rambo would probably win, but they would still be mangled, essentially, is what he implies, no matter how the fight goes down. And of course, Rambo is like undoubtedly beyond peak human, and that as well dovetails into speed. Now, within the Rocky series alone, there's of course the silly statements like, oh, this character's lightning fast, lightning quick jab. Of course, the fastest boxer is around like punches at 45 miles per hour or something like that. In the real world, someone like Apollo, who was known for his intense speed, should be within that same tier. But again, looking at Rambo, a guy shoots like an AK at him and he's able to just avoid it. And so given that, how do you think somebody like that would compare to some of the top tiers in the Alien saga?
The way you speak of Rambo makes out like that Dutch tier of scaling and whatnot. And I mean, a lot of people are going to watch that movie and think, okay, Dutch isn't impressive, but the novel makes him out to be just crack. Like, he can just attune his senses to like the entire jungle and adapt to that environment. And there's like statements like when he's like attacking that rebel camp at the start with his crew, he's like, adrenaline gets pumping and he like enters near superhuman levels of like strength and stamina. So I mean, I'd say Rambo would still be top tier in that verse. I mean, Dutch still needed post-Predator. If you go by the hunting grounds law for that game, he needs those like crazy amps to like really get a solid footing on a Predator.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth using Dutch as a benchmark, obviously, because within the wider lore, Predators and Aliens are pretty much equal. There are various tiers where the highest caliber Predators could easily dispatch multiple Xenomorphs, but generally taking on a Xenomorph, that's kind of the benchmark for the Yautja culture. And so comparing Dutch to Rambo, I think, is definitely a succinct way to go about it. However, Rambo is not Rocky. He does physically scale to Rambo, and especially skill-wise, which is very important to clarify, because Rambo is just stated verbatim to be the best fighter on Earth, with every weapon, with his hands, just all across the board. So per the kind of god of the universe, Sylvester Stallone, they'd be able to scrap with each other. Now, the question becomes, obviously, Rocky, we're not giving him a gun or an explosive bow and arrow. He's in the ring boxing a Xenomorph. It's going to come down to physical 1v1 prowess. And in that arena, considering the fact that blatantly, outright, as crazy as it sounds, when you convert the amount of PSI that Ivan Drago was packing, it would necessarily mean that Rocky does straight up punch harder with more force than what is behind the assault rifle fire that, pretty consistently is able to cut down multiple Xenomorphs. Now, this is within the movies. Let's ignore the video games for a second, all the weird comics, that aren't even canon to each other, right? Like, it's not like Star Wars where there's this expanded universe and it's all connected. These are like weird pocket dimensions that just keep spawning from, maybe one or two of the movies. Ignoring all those, just focusing on the main films. How do you think it's going to go? Ding, ding, ding. In one corner, Rocky Balboa, and the other corner is Xenomorph. They meet in the middle. What do you think happens?
I mean, I think, again, you've just got to draw comparisons to, the Alien versus Predator movies, where a young blood Predator in the first movie was able to just, beat the dog shit out of Xenomorph drone. He does end up losing, but that's really because he gets, too arrogant. But for, 99.9% of that fight, the Predator is winning, literally ragdolling the alien. Rocky's not a moron. I mean, you'd see the blade at the end of the Xenomorph's tail. You'd see razor sharp teeth, its claws and whatnot. So it's really probably just get up close and just beat the dog shit out of it, rather than play the game at the end of the jab like Apollo would. It's Apollo crafted style that he got in Rocky 3. A lot more like when he fights Ivan Drago, up close, just raw power kind of thing. Obviously there's technique behind it and all that, but something like the Xenomorph, you don't want to give it an opening, just like the Predator didn't. Because as soon as it gets that opening, it's called the perfect organism for a reason, because it has all these outs to basically win a fight. But again, if you don't give him that opening to capitalize on that, then it's not going to happen. So
I think that is a good point, because I think a lot of people are going to find it hard to believe, the Xenomorph's like this weird, unorthodox thing. But if you really, especially using AVP as a benchmark in Dutch, Ellen Ripley, etc., if you look at the first Predator movie, the jungle hunter, sure, he's obviously defeats these top level soldiers, but when it comes to physical strikes, I mean, he backhands Arnold and his face isn't caved in. He's not really bloody or insanely wounded after that. I mean, it's not like that thing is in a total different tier. In fact, most of the time he's using his high level weapons to take out the squad in the first Predator. And the Predator and Xenomorphs are obviously physically comparable, just one Xeno compared to one Predator. And so if you look at Rocky, who is a superhuman boxer, and I guess my question would be, do you think you can concuss a Xenomorph? Would Rocky be able to rely on the techniques that he has honed so far, or would it kind of be like a toss-up?
So they do have brains. In AVP, there's a Xenomorph that tries to sneak up on the main Predator in that, and he cuts its head off. You see the brain. Based on how concussions work, when it's the brain rattling about in the skull, I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility at all to say that a Xenomorph can get concussed. And like you saying, Dutch, he's, they're still far apart, but Dutch can still take attacks from the Predator, and the Predator would be holding back, but not to a physical extent, a sense that it's no longer using its weapons, because obviously the code of honor and whatnot that the Yautja go by. So Rocky shouldn't have much issue.
Right, and again, I think another important factor here is speed, because let's even ignore AVP for a second, just strictly Alien. I think the argument becomes a lot easier, because these Xenomorphs are getting cut down by assault rifle fire, and I'm pretty sure those do in the Alien universe have official speeds. They're not laser pulse rifles all the time. A lot of the time they are getting cut down by standard military weapons, which sure in the future, so they could be somewhat advanced, but it's kind of nebulous. You'd kind of need a definitive number to really prove that it's hundreds of times faster than an AK-47, which, per again, Sylvester Stallone, extrapolating from that, most likely Rocky would be able to anticipate that as superhuman verbatim. These superhuman boxers he's fighting also have superhuman speed. It's not out of the realm of possibility when we're talking about a fictitious super boxer here that can, crack concrete and etc. So I think overall, and you can agree with me or disagree, but I think the case is, if we're looking at strictly the Alien movies, the Xenomorphs are just physically not that impressive, and they have been dealt with by far less, especially 1v1. And again, you have to think in the first movie, it was really only a threat because these are blue collar workers, they aren't warriors. And in the second movie, it is a band of soldiers, but they're just far outnumbered more times than not. And again, looking at making these solid parallels and equivocations, looking at Dutch, comparing him to Rambo, then comparing him to Rocky, and then comparing a Predator to a Xenomorph, just even a fodder Xenomorph, seems to be the case that Rocky would be far faster, fast enough to either anticipate or dodge assault rifle fire, which the Xenomorphs cannot consistently do, and physically, funnily enough, far stronger than what these Xenomorphs are consistently shown to withstand. And so I think we're going to see Rocky pull things out that we've honestly never seen before. I mean, if you look at Rocky 5 and some statements from Rocky 6, he actually knows a lot more about combat than simply boxing. It's stated that he knows everything there is to know about fighting. So, and that also makes the Rambo statement more consistent. So I honestly think this is going to go very badly for the Xenomorph. That's strictly, of course, just the film canon. If we sort of broaden the horizons, like I keep mentioning to AVP, for example, I think it does more times than not look bad for Rocky. I think some of the more crazy showings like Predators in the comics can just bully Batman. He needs like a super suit. And then if you extrapolate from there that a Xenomorph is pretty consistently roughly equal to a Predator, you can get some pretty crazy conclusions based on that. The big fear, in my opinion, is if he gets blood on him, that's definitely just going to burn right through Rocky's like limbs. It's going to be really bad. But I think given his speed, given his strength, and given his ability to predict muscle movements, which even real world boxers can do to some extent, I think Rocky would more times than not secure the KO victory.
Like you said, like at the end of the day, most of the time in the Alien franchise, just like randos up against them. And when the Xenomorphs go up against, competent people with weapons in a fair environment, they just get fucked. Basically, like the Colonial Marines, there are various reasons as to why they get bullied at the start of Aliens. Arrogance, they're playing on the Xenomorphs, home field advantage. Even the information that they're given by Ripley in the meeting before they go to that outpost isn't accurate, because she's only seen a drone and they get attacked by warriors. So yeah, equal fielding, everything's fair. Xenomorphs getting done out,
Couldn't have said it better myself.